Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Apologize for the short delay. We're having a little technical difficulties. Hopefully we can get that up and going so that our sponsor and our co-presenter tonight, Rentler, can get their audio-visual up so he can teach you a little bit about property management software and some of the other issues. I'm Paul Smith. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the Apartment Association. It's good to see everybody out tonight. The topic that I'm going to cover is ownership entities and risk management, including insurance. So just by a show of hands, how many of you own your rental properties in your own name, or in other words, it's a sole proprietorship? Okay. That's a good 2/3 of the room. How many of you have some type of LLC that you've set up? Okay, great. How many of you have an S Corp that you hold your properties in? Okay? How many of you have another type of corporation or regular corporation that you hold your properties in? Okay, not very many. Okay, well, as you can see, the most common two types of ownership of rental property are sole proprietorship and a LLC. Now, there's a couple others we're going to talk about. Does anybody have a general partnership or a limited partnership? Okay, so I'm not an expert, I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not an accountant. What I am is a pragmatist. So what I have learned over the years is landlords don't need to be taught history, they don't need to be taught where in the code it describes these. What they just want to know is, how does it affect me and how does it help me protect myself, okay? So let's talk a little bit about risk. What are some of the risks that you as a landlord face? Risk of litigation over what?
Fall down on the sidewalk.
Somebody slips and falls on your property. What else?
Flood in the basement.
A flood or something in the basement.
I worry that my brick duplex is going to fall if there's an earthquake. It's going to
Okay?
crush somebody
Earthquake and kill somebody.
and it kills them.
Okay.
Or they have nowhere to live. And
Okay.
suddenly it might fall.
Okay? So we're not going to ask for a show of hands, but there are some of us who stay up late worrying about these kind of things. And there's others of us who are just oblivious and we just don't care. So risk mitigation is for all of us, but especially those that worry, okay? Because your worry moments are not, you can't add them back in at the end of your life, if you know what I mean. They're just gone. So let's try to cut those out by helping you protect yourself. And one way you can protect yourself from risk is through insurance. All of us should have property insurance. What is the difference, though, between a homeowner's policy and a landlord's policy for a rental property that you own?
So, on the landlord's side, the insurance covers basically the structure of the building,
Okay.
the land.
But not
Not the renters.
not the
personal
possessions,
possessions
okay.
that are inside the
Right.
lot of the tenants.
But on a homeowner's policy, it covers everything. And sometimes if we've had policies too long or for a while and the market has appreciated, it is a wise move to call up your insurance agent and say, hey, what am I insured for anyway? Because you might 20 years ago have insured your house for $150,000 and your possessions for $50,000. Now your house is worth $300,000 and your possessions are worth $200,000, and it might be wise to monitor the value of your policy. Yes?
Paul, can you get a rider for meth? Chemical contamination?
So we have Brad in the back asking if you can get a rider for meth. And I'm not an insurance guy. I'm not aware of any. I have never seen any policies that cover meth. But that is another risk that you have. Right? So policies are important to have and to understand the value. But another tool that landlords often use is called an umbrella insurance policy. An umbrella insurance policy might take your $500,000 policy up to $1 million or $2 million, and it's pretty affordable. I did it for my 17 units, and I think it was $400 a year to take my liability protection all the way up to $1 million. Now, when I say take it up to $1 million, what do I mean?
That's the most it will cover if it's...
I mean, if somebody sues me for a slip and fall, or a meth incident, or a fire, or a flood, or an earthquake, I'm covered up to $1 million, okay? Now, most of us have lots of different policies, not just our homeowner's policy. We have insurance, we have health insurance, we have homeowner's insurance, we have car insurance, and an umbrella actually takes all of those coverages up to $1 million or $2 million or whatever we buy. So I recommend, if you worry, pay the $400 extra a year to have that peace of mind and that protection. Now, specifically on earthquakes and floods, those are two specific types of insurance that aren't normally covered in other policies. Violent dogs are not covered in other policies. However, if you have a assistance animal request and they want a pit bull, that will be covered. Why? Because the threat of litigation and the history of litigation against insurance companies basically leads them to cave in. So they might say, oh, we don't allow pit bulls, but somebody asks for an accommodation pit bull, and you say, sorry, my insurance won't let me. Don't do that. Because if they went to the insurance and said, you really won't allow a pit bull as an assistance animal, they'd fold in a minute and say, oh, our policy says that, but we'll go ahead and cover it in your case. We'll make an accommodation. Okay? So those are additional types of insurance. Flood, we usually buy if we're in a floodplain. Earthquake, we buy if we're in an earthquake plain, which all of us are. How many of us, by the show of hands, have earthquake insurance? And I don't, so I won't raise my hand. So about, I would say, 15% of the room has earthquake insurance. And again, if you're a worrier, if you're worried about everything being wiped out, it's worth looking into it and considering. Again, I'm not an insurance person. Talk to your insurance person. Okay. There is a line where we get enough assets or enough value or enough equity in our life where we might want to consider going to another level of protection above and beyond insurance. And that includes things like LLCs. And there are several types of LLCs, but the most common is a single entity LLC, and the second most common is a series LLC. How many of you that have LLCs have single entity LLCs? How many of you have series LLCs? Does anybody? Okay. Can you tell me what a series LLC is?
So you have, for lack of a better description, you have your parent company, so they can actually retrofit, if you will, your existing LLC into your parent company. Now that parent company is the one that holds everything. It holds all your money. That's where all your rent comes in and out of, all that kind of stuff. Now, you can establish with simply they give you a copy, and they're called baby LLCs or series LLCs, and they'll give you as a 2 or 3 page document that you photocopy, and then every time you want to create an LLC, instead of going to whatever cities it is in and paying that, and it was $74 and getting a new EIN and stuff like that, it falls under the same EIN as that parent company. So as long as you don't keep any of your finances in any of those series LLCs, when someone sues, say, number 1 over here, 4, 5, and 6 can't be touched because they're a separate entity, but they're seen as one tax ID to the government.
Okay, so the purpose of an LLC is, I don't know if you remember, Mitt Romney got a really bad press for saying corporations are not people. Or corporations are people, is what he said, right? And it's true, because under the legal definition, if you are a person, okay, you can form a corporation, or in this case an LLC, that is a separate entity. And let's say you have a home, okay, and if you hold it in your name, and somebody slips and falls, and there's only $20,000 equity in that property, but they get $100,000 judgment against you, what happens? You got to come up with the other 80, okay? So what people do is they create these separate persons or legal entities, LLC corporation, they put the rental property in there, and then if there is a lawsuit, it's not against the owner of the LLC, it's against the LLC, and there might only be $20,000 of equity, and that's the maximum they can get out of that, even if they've got a $100,000 judgment, unless, here's a little tricky thing, you did not follow the law, and they can what's called pierce the veil, or pierce the LLC, and those of you that have LLCs, what are the things you're supposed to do to make sure that it's intact? You got to hold annual meetings. Okay? Could it be in your living room? Sure. Can it be in Hawaii? Sure, but you gotta hold annual meetings and have notes. What else? Minutes. What else? What's the thing with money?
Pay your rent.
Don't commingle.
You can't commingle. So if you take rent, it can't be deposited into your personal account and then pay off rental issues. It has to go into a separate account for rental. So again, I'm not trying to teach you all the ins and outs of LLCs, but those are the top mistakes people make is they commingle and they don't have annual meetings and they don't just do minutes of their annual meetings. Yes?
So what happens if you want to take money out of your business and pay yourself, or if you need to give money to your business to cover your bills?
Those are tax issues. They don't have anything to do with liability. So if I had a bunch of money here and I wanted to refinance, equity here I wanted to refinance, or money and I wanted to pay myself, that's a tax question. It doesn't have anything to do with liability. Okay? All right, other questions on the LLC. So here's the problem, is what if I have 2 rental homes? Well, I could set up 2 LLCs or 3 LLCs or something like that. Or I could put it all in one LLC. But if I put it all in one LLC, what could happen?
They could take it all.
They could take it all. One little thing could happen and they could take it all. And so a few years ago, the IRS came up with this thing called the Series LLC, which makes it so instead of having to set up multiple LLCs, it's like having one LLC, but it's also like having 10 LLCs in the one LLC. Does that make sense? Okay? So there are a lot of attorneys and there are a lot of accountants who say everyone in this room should have an LLC. Okay? Everyone should have some type of income protection. I don't feel that way because I think when you don't have a lot of equity, a lot of net worth, an insurance policy is probably sufficient. But I'm not an expert. Talk to both your insurance people, talk to your attorneys, and talk to your accountants. And at some point, if you do get, say $1 million in personal equity, at that point you may want to look at some type of ownership entity or protection. Okay? Questions? Yes?
You just have to file one tax return for a series LLC?
Correct. Now, LLC money is pass-through money. So if you know what I'm talking about, it would go over to your tax form, and whether you have 10 or you have 1, it all shows up on the same line of your taxes. The cost comes with, if you had an accountant prepare those, they might charge you an extra $200 for each LLC. So that might be the preparation cost. And the other cost is the registration cost. Every separate entity you have to pay separate annual registration cost. In a series LLC, you only have to pay 1. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So, other questions? Saw another hand in the back. Yes?
You can have a duplex, would both addresses be separate LLCs?
Okay, if you have a duplex with 2 addresses, how is it listed on the county tax records? As one property with 1 address. So the second address is a postal address only. It's not for the plat or the county ID, so it's irrelevant on something like this. A good question. Thoughtful question in the back.
What are the pitfalls of the series LLC? Why wouldn't everyone do it that way?
Well, they cost a little bit more money to set up. But other than that, can you think of any pitfalls of a series LLC?
Only if you accidentally set your money in the wrong LLC, or
So again, if you commingle, you might cause the whole LLC to be pierced and for the assets to be mutually attachable or garnishable, if you will. Yes?
Other minor one is you can't represent the LLC in court because it's a separate entity from you now.
So let's make sure everybody understands that. When I own property in my name and I'm sued, I have the right constitutionally to defend myself in the court of law. Okay? Do I have the right to defend my spouse? No, I would have to have a license to practice law to be able to defend my spouse. So just like my spouse is a separate entity, if I have an LLC or a corporation, I also cannot represent it in court, even on something like an eviction. So if you went to do an eviction, you want to do it yourself, most of you hire an attorney because it's cheap anyway. But let's say you wanted to, you could do it yourself if it was in your name. You can't do it yourself if it's an LLC or if you're managing a property for another person. Okay? Yes?
So if you have it in a series, do you have to have a bank account for every one of those different?
You do not.
No.
You do not. Okay? Yes?
Since you're commingling your money, shouldn't the rent for A go to A? and
So I'm not
so
an
on?
expert on LLCs, but my understanding is that you do not, those of you that have series LLCs, do you have separate bank accounts for everything within it?
So I've heard of institutions that allow it, but I haven't done it yet.
Mine told me to separate them.
So you separate them, you don't separate them.
Mine have separate books, very detailed books for each LLC, but on everything.
They have a bank account that then disperses it by, it's an accounting protection, not a bank account protection. That's my understanding. The IRS isn't really concerned so much about which bank account it goes into. They're worried about how you account for it in your records. Which is a little odd, because I would have assumed that you have to have separate ones. Yes?
So do you need separate annual meetings?
Probably. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe a tax person would say it's a good idea to have an annual meeting or at least have an agenda where you cover each thing. You know, we're going to talk about property A, we're going to talk about property B, we're going to talk about property C, and we're going to make decisions on allocations or investments or whatever in each case. Again, don't rely on any information we give you tonight. Don't see a tax attorney or a lawyer. We're just trying to be practical enough to keep you out of trouble until you actually need to hire somebody.
On these meetings, if you're just forming it by yourself,
Yeah.
who do you hold the meeting with?
Yeah.
Okay, so good question. Those of you that hold annual meetings for your LLC, would you explain yourself? What do? Do you like play chess against yourself and move from chair to chair? And how do you do it?
Sit on a beach in Hawaii.
I know a lot of people that go somewhere and hold an annual meeting somewhere, but technically all you need to do is, if there are multiple owners of that LLC, they all need to get together. So if it's you and your spouse, you just need to get together and have a discussion and have an annual report on the property, things like that. So it's really not as hard as it sounds.
There's just one person.
Well, but this is you.
Then set up a chess table and rotate. No, it's fine. But again, this is a question for your attorney or your accountant, because he's seen it 1,000 times and he can tell you exactly what to do. Yes, Brad?
I think what we do is we just do a Word document, we put the date down, who's there, talk about the property, this is the income, these are the problems, this is a challenge for years to come, sign it, and it's done.
Okay.
There you go.
That's a great way to describe it. Okay. What else? Yes?
The person who does all of the notes for me, they're my second person.
Great. So there you have a secretary at the meeting. Got it. The board secretary. Yes?
So you've got our attorney for the properties, the Cullen Large. You have some attorneys for set up the LLCs and stuff like that?
Sure. If you need an LLC, call the apartment association, email us, and we'll send you a couple of attorneys that can help you with that type of thing. Normally we have one of them speak, but he was unavailable tonight, so.
Just one another time.
Another time. You have to go back every 6 months.
Just to get it straight.
Yes.
It really depends. If you do the LLCs, because you can have insurance that's going to cover you for liability.
Correct.
As a single owner. So
Correct.
It's really a matter of like double protection.
Yeah, so if I had people from different industries, I had the insurance person here, my guess is they would say, LLCs are okay, but they're really not necessary. I mean, they're fine, I don't have anything against them, but I can do everything with my insurance product that they can. And the LLC guy, the attorneys and the accountants are going to say, well, sure, I make money setting these up, but I also think that they're valuable and they're designed by people that were trying to do asset management and asset protection. They're designed specifically for your purposes. Insurance might or might not cover you. They might say, remember those insurance guys, they have an incentive not to pay and to find a way to deny your claim. And, you know, I'm not going to take a position between the two, but that's what each of them might say if they were here. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to turn the time over to Rentler.
Take a 2-minute break.
But we're going to take a 2-minute break first.
And if you can't see the screen, you're welcome to move over. So
Apparently we're unable to get this screen working. So they're going to move over. They're going to present on this side. You're welcome to move over.
might be worth talking to me.
So we'll do some quick introductions. I'm Martin. I'm the marketing director over at Rentler. TJ and Lisa, I'll let them do a quick introduction.
I'm the sales manager at Rentler.
Can't hear you. Speak up a bit.
I'm TJ. I've been with Rentler for 4 years, and I'm the sales manager.
I'm Lisa. I do lots of things, and I've been there for 3 years.
Administrative assistant.
All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explain a little bit about what Rentler is, how it's a tool that maybe you guys would be interested in using if you're not currently using a software right now to manage your portfolio of rentals. So if you have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand. We'll call on you. But we're basically going to go through a demonstration of how the product works, how you set yourself up. We do online payments for your tenants, screenings, applications. You can purchase legal forms off of there, and the landlord, it is free to the landlord. We make our money on the tenant side every time they submit their rent or they do a screening. So it's just a nice umbrella to have all your rentals under to be able to manage it all instead of using different, like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that.
Cool. So we'll get started. You can stop me at any point if you have questions about what's going on. I will preface that so to be able to do everything that I'm about to show you, we are in a stage environment of our website, so I can almost guarantee something is going to not work while we're going through it, so I'm sorry in advance for that. But I'm going to actually be operating the site as both a landlord and a tenant account. So I will actually be filling out forms like you would fill out. You can actually see what the tenant is going to see. I'll pull that up for you guys. We'll fill out some of that information. It's all going to be fake information, but then you can actually see what it populates the landlord side with as well. So we'll go through all of that. How many of you guys are using Rentler right now? A few of you guys, probably for listings, I'm guessing. Yep. So we aren't going to cover listings tonight because that would take up all of our time alone, but we will cover all the other tools. And then,
So one question about listings. If I send somebody to your site to sign up or something, are they going to see all these other people's cheaper, nicer properties than mine?
if you send them to the Salt Lake link, then they'll see any properties that are there. But if you send them to your link, then you're sending them only to your property.
So I can have my own link.
You can invite by email. Under the applications tab, there's a copy link for invite by email that you can send to anybody.
Yep. And we will talk a little bit about that, but applications and screenings are both integrated into our listing service, so you can have people, if you list it on the site, you can have them apply straight from that listing. There's a little apply now button that they can click, and it'll drop them right into their account, or if they don't have an account, they'll be prompted to create an account. And then I guess the only other thing before we jump in, if you don't have a Rentler account and you're planning on creating an account, or if you have a Rentler account already, we recently entered into a partnership with the UAA, and what that is going to do is it's going to allow us to provide a little bit of money back to the UAA to continue to do events like this. So if you're going to sign up, or if you're just going to sign back in, go to tryrentler.com/UAA, and it'll link your account with the UAA. So any action you take is tracked through a little tracking software we use, but then if you have somebody submit a screening, do a payment, we basically do a little bit of a revenue share on any of those actions.
Would you repeat that address again?
Yep, it's going to be TryRentler, TryRentler.com/UAA. And then on the UAA site, we have links on there already as well, so you can always go through the UAA dashboard. All right. So I'm going to start on the landlord side here. I already have an account created. but if you don't have an account created, you can go to that link, or it'll drop you into this page right here. Enter your information, super simple and easy, and free to get started. So you won't have to do anything to actually create an account there. But we already have an account, so we'll go ahead and sign in here. And then I also have all of these test user emails up. We have it for both the landlord here, and then over here on the second screen I have a tenant set up. I will go ahead and sign her in as well. So when you jump in here, this is the first screen you're going to see. We're assuming that a lot of you are going to be selecting landlord manager, probably not setting yourself up as a tenant. On the tenant side, they'll see the same thing, but they would select as a tenant. To do anything in the system, you are going to have to add property. Everything in the system actually is based off of a property. And so it'll drop you right here onto this page as soon as you sign in or create an account. Pretty simple. You'll just add a new property here. You'll select the property type. For what we're doing right now, we're going to actually add a condo. So we'll come down here. And then I'm going to pull up some information that I know is going to work. So I will do this first, actually, just to show you guys. If you put in an address and it is incorrect, and you don't have to add a photo, we definitely recommend it, but I'm going to submit it because I know that this address is incorrect. You'll end up on this screen. The system will not let you add a property that does not have a valid address. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then once an address has been added to the system, you can't add it again. So we'll go back and actually add the correct address here.
So Barton, I have a question, because what if I buy a property that somebody else used on Rentler? How do I get it into my portfolio?
Well, we deal with that all the time. You would give us a call on the customer support number, and you would probably talk to Christina or one of our other support people, and they would help you go through the process of transferring an address over to your account. So in the system, we would just reallocate that particular property into your account if it's already been taken by somebody else. All right, and then I'm going to add a photo.
Is there a way, if you have your address in your account and your tenant wants to, you know, before the end of their lease, advertise and do the work, is there a way to give them power to temporarily use that address?
No.
No?
Because you already have the address locked down.
Right.
So it would do the same thing, it wouldn't allow them to post on there.
So
There is a sublease, like if it was okay with you and you were just ready to, you could just go ahead and put the listing back up and we could put it as a sublease. And you could help them get rid of it that way, or you could actually just give them the address for them to create their own account, but we would suggest you just still keep it under you just go ahead and list it.
And then could we list their phone number and name as the contact?
You could do that. You could change that, yes.
And make them call, okay, yes.
So my husband and I both own the property and we both use these software. Do we set up separate accounts or do we use the same?
If you want to manage the same properties, then you would have to have the same account. So you couldn't share an account with two different, or you couldn't share the property with two separate landlord accounts. All right, so we've got our particular property set up now. If you were going to do a listing, you would come down here to listings, create a listing, We won't go through the process, but you would just select that property you just added right there, and it'll take you through a bunch of different steps to actually set that listing up. But we are going to jump back. We can go back to applications. We'll click on that property, and to answer the question that you were asking about, this is where you would find this URL that you can share right there, or you can invite by email. So we're actually going to invite by email here, and we're going to invite the tenant that we just set up. Don't actually have a number for this person, but we'll do that. Send it her way. So we have just invited our tenant to apply to our property. I will jump back over her email address here. It should show up here unless I typed it all wrong. Well, we'll give it a second. We can keep moving through some of the other tools, and then once that screening shows up there, then I will show you what it looks like in the email. In the meantime, I'll copy that link. Jump over. So there it is. So if you invite somebody via email, this is what it'll look like here. And you'll end up here with an application that can be filled out by the tenant. We don't have a lot of information here for her right now, but if she had filled all of this out already, she could just come down here. If you required a screening on that particular application, they would go to the next step and do a screening.
Are all of you guys currently using applications now with your rentals?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we use our own, so do you have a way where we can put out, chosen application on there that may have different or more information than yours?
The custom application is in our roadmap, but right now we don't support a custom application. So you do have to use like our current format, but it asks a lot of the general questions that a lot of people would use. So I would suggest taking a look at it and seeing if that lines up with what you're currently using.
Yeah, and the application information is pretty standard that we already have in there. So it should cover most anything that you might need, but yeah, it's not in there yet. So let's say that we had submitted that application and we did not require screening with that application. I'm back on the landlord side here, and I want to send somebody a screening, just an email to request them to fill out a screening. And want to come up here and click new screening. As a landlord, I have not been verified yet in the system though. So you do have to be verified through our system to run screenings and payments. Right now, I'm going to put in some information that will verify me for the time being. But to use either of those tools, you will have to submit the information. It does go pretty quickly.
Do you guys have any questions about anything that our software could help you with? Is there anything that you guys are currently struggling with right now that you could see as software helping you manage your portfolio of rentals better?
So, TJ, if I just say, I think that two biggest things that the people in this room are interested in are the payment processing tool and the property management tool. If you could go over those, that's what they care most about. And that's what we advertised that the class was going to be about.
Okay. So we have an online payment. We use Experian. Right? Is that what we use? For screenings, we use Experian. Our online payments, you basically, it's the same way you invite your tenant.
So we can force a tenant into this particular unit without having to actually have them go through a screening or an application, which we can do right now. You would do that through this leases tab here, add a new lease to this. You will add that same person there.
So then she would get an email from Rentler asking her to sign up for our online payments, and she would,
Yep, I'll show that. If in this particular property you had other tenants that you wanted under the same payment series, you would add them here.
So
you
roommates,
could
you
add
can
another
split
tenant.
it, you can,
But if you wanted to split it between two people, you would just add one person to this particular property, and then you would add another person to the property. If you wanted them on the same one, you would just add them both at the same time. So a great example would be if they were two roommates that you knew were going to be in different bedrooms, you were charging them different amounts of money, you would add, in this case, Carol first, and then add the next one, but it might be a husband and wife in the same piece, in the same property. You would just add another tenant here and add them both to the same lease in the system, and then invite them both at the same time. But in this case, we're only going to invite one person. So we have her in here. We're just going to have the lease starting tomorrow. You can give a date to when the lease ends, or you can do no end date month to month. We'll do that right now, just so we can look at everything in the system. We'll submit. So you've now had her added. We'll jump back over here. Again, it might take a second.
there's also a cool feature, it's a benefit to them, if they can enroll and actually help them build their credit, they can enroll into a system that allows them to report that they're making a positive mortgage payment if they make their rent in full and on time. So it's a benefit to them to do those two things, and then it shows on their credit report that they're making a positive mortgage payment every month.
Sure, that's
Is there a way to show on their credit report that they're late every single month?
No.
They don't know. It's reported through Experian, and they don't allow that right now, the negative, but they will allow the positive. So that's more of a tenant benefit.
So the positive doesn't go through, if it's on the due date, if it's 1 day late, the positive doesn't go in?
No.
It has to be on the due date, and it has to be in full.
But it doesn't show any information. So if they don't pay on time, it doesn't show as a positive, but it doesn't show as a negative. It just has, and every reporting is different, but the ones that I've seen just have like a question mark or it'll just be NA, not applicable.
And it hits your, yes.
What do they charge the tenant for doing that?
$1.95 per payment. So they don't charge, that's just the fee to process a payment or to pay online.
That's how much.
And then it just comes with, yeah.
And you, the landlord, have that option to pass the fee along to them, or if you want to take it yourself. And it's $1.95. So they're building their credit, they have an opportunity to build their credit. So, I mean, I think it's a small amount for, yes.
How much is the fee?
$1.95. It's free for the landlord to use.
Yeah, $1.95, what, $300?
What's that?
It's $1.95 per payment if they use an ACH payment. And then there's it's $2.75 for a credit card processing fee.
Yep, so we'll jump down to
2.75%.
we can jump down to the payments and add a new payment series. We've already got that lease set up for her. I was going to just show really quickly. If you click into the lease, you can see where the tenant is right there. You can manage. So here you can invite those additional tenants if you want to, but we're going to back out.
Yeah, so an ACH, they drafted out of their checking account and put it into ours.
Yes.
Okay, so that's at $1.95, that's really cheaper than gas.
Yeah. Any landlord or even apartment community that's offering online payments, they're charging at least $1.95 to do online payments, so.
But even if they weren't, Brad, you're right, it's cheaper than going over there and getting it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you get the money, it's 2 to 3 business days,
Yeah, so you can see right down here, $1.95 for bank account, credit card is 2.9%, and then if they use a debit card, it's 1.9%. So they are pretty highly incentivized to attach their bank account to their payment series.
And it hits your bank account in 2 days. Yes.
You mentioned that you cannot customize your application, but we can customize the actual lease itself, or do you have a preset lease that you're using?
So the lease in the system right now is not a legal lease. It's not a legally binding lease. The assumption is that they've already signed a paper lease with you that lays out all of your legal requirements for them. The lease in our system is essentially attaching those tenants to your digital property, so to speak, and then giving them a time period that they're going to be living in that
You
particular
just
house.
add lease information.
It's
to
just
the
more of a
property.
check-in to the
Yes.
system, the database. How scalable is this?
In scalable, you mean to number of properties?
Right.
So you can manage an unlimited number of properties in this for free. You can add as many properties as you want. You can add as many tenants as you want to any of those particular properties.
But you don't have an accounting component with it.
Right now, we have the accounting, it's just the bank transfers feature that will, so say you had $5,000 deposited into your bank account from rent payments, it would give you a breakdown of who and what was included in that, but there isn't, like, we have that in the works as far as rent roll, tax.
Rent
tax
roll,
reporting.
payment expenses,
Yeah.
refunds for security deposits and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're working on the majority of that.
So this is just a real basic to track the tenant.
Yes.
So you lump, if I've got 5 tenants paying with us, you lump all 5 payments together and then pay it to me?
It just depends on when they pay. So if somebody pays on the 1st, that deposit's gonna be initiated, and somebody else is paying on the 5th, that's getting initiated later. So you're gonna get your deposit in 2 business days, regardless of when they pay.
So from whatever they pay, it's 2 more businesses, so it goes out of their account, takes 2 more days to get to mine.
Correct.
Where's the money in the meantime?
That's just the processing time with our.
Yes, so we utilize Stripe for our processing partner, and they run a large majority of online payment processing. It's not sitting anywhere with us, it's just the time it takes for them to process that money. So out of your bank account or out of the tenant's bank account into your bank account.
But if we want them to pay by the 1st, they go to the revenue due us 2 days earlier to have it arrive on time.
Yeah, correct.
Because like I have some folks pay with Zelle, the bank-to-bank app, and it comes immediately.
Yeah. So it's not going to come immediately, so if you would need to.
But if you
account-
had 3 people pay on the same day, they would all 3 be put together in one payment to us.
Yes. It depends on the banking institution too, the financial institution, but for the most part, we have a lot of clients that are getting lump deposits from the 1st.
Okay. So that's something I want to suggest. Like for me, I do different rent amounts depending on which place it is. So just by looking at the amount, I can see whose money got paid, and that's the end of my paperwork. And at least for me, that's a key thing, because then I know whose money landed, even without looking at the other records. So it'd be cool if you guys made it, we could probably do it either way. Some people would want bulk payments, and some would want separate ones, you know.
And unfortunately, that's through our payment process, so we don't really have much say with that, but that's why we rolled out the accounting feature that will lay out what is included in that deposit.
Lisa, are you currently sending emails that say, congratulations, we just deposited $1,000 in your account? Are you notifying people through any communication like that, like some systems do?
They're not getting a payment notification from it now. We don't integrate with the bank itself, so.
Because it's through the payment processor.
What if we've got somebody set up with us and rent is $1,200 and they pay $1,000?
There's a feature where you can set to not accept partial payments, or you can accept partial payments. And then there's also where you can add late fees that go on a certain day. So you can give them a grace period, or not a grace period, and then it will automatically charge them late fees, and then they would get notified later.
Can you click on your accounting tab so you have the report that's live?
Or do we have?
So I'm gonna have to sign into another account because, so you to use the accounting tool, you have to have payment series set up, so otherwise it won't populate.
It'll show you by contract, prepaid.
Yeah. So it'll show you the deposit amount, and then you click into it, and then it will pull the
Let's see.
details. Yep. Yes.
So if you don't send out a notice, how do we know which unit paid?
You do get a payment notification.
Yeah, but not a deposit.
Not a deposit notification, you get a payment notification.
Okay.
So if your tenant has paid, you get a notification.
We get a notification, and then we just watch the bank for it to come through in a couple of days.
Correct.
So I'm going to ask a question regarding our voice with your company. You keep saying we are doing this, like you're doing it down the street in your garage, which would be cool, versus an unnamed company in another state. You know, we come to this group because we have trust and confidence in them, in their leases and their advice and all the other things that they do. Do we have a voice with you? Where are you, like I say, you're based in Atlanta and you work for you put out 50 different products for 50 different states, and we're really not going to have any say as to what happens here.
We're based out of Utah, we're 1 minute down the road right now.
Okay, that's a good start.
And we sent out, we just sent out an email asking for user testers for anybody that was signed up on our site. So we definitely value the opinion of all of our clients, and especially you guys, because you guys are our demographic for our software.
Okay.
So that's definitely something
Good to know.
that we value.
She's been waiting there. I have two questions. One is, can I handle refuse of application fees?
Lisa, will you repeat the question?
Yes.
We can't hear in the back.
She asked if we handle the application fees and if they get a receipt. I don't think that they get a receipt.
They do not get a receipt.
But they,
email.
it's in their account, in their dashboard, the tenant dashboard. And the tenants pay, so, for example, the application, you can take on the application, or you can have the tenant pay for it, but they would pay $35 to apply. So they would apply for the application. If you required screening, then it would automatically put them into the flow of paying for it, entering all the information. Or they submit an application, wait for you to accept, and then request a screening. And then at that point, they can pay.
I have a question. So when you're filling out, it says, do you require screening? Okay. I don't, but I was wondering if the tenants look through, you might have somebody really sketchy who's just looking for landlords that don't require screenings. Or have they?
We don't notify them at any point in the application that you do or do not require. So like if you have a listing and let's say you require applications, all that does is allow an apply now button on your listing. There's nothing that says anything about do or do not require.
Right, great, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing outwardly that does that unless they applied, went through the whole process and just, and at the end, it didn't require screening, but that would mean they were having to apply.
And in the listing, so if it's from the listing, there's an OAC box, so on approved credit box that you can check or uncheck. So you can make it known that you do, you know, it's on approved credit or not, but that's through the listing. It's not in the application. So when you're advertising it, you can advertise that you do require an application and you will get a background check. Does that make sense?
An application is different from a background check.
Yes. The application is just the information, and then screening is the actual report that comes
So
through.
they could look through, if they have a sketchy cost, they could look through and look for listings that don't require background checks.
On the listings, yes.
On the listings, they could search through.
That's still, yeah, but some people click it and some people don't, the OAC, and some people don't even know what it stands for, and so it's really, I mean, they're gonna have to go through a lot of listings.
If it says, if they don't click it, it doesn't say we don't require an application.
And it's not a filter, so they can't just go and search that way.
Right, right. But if you do click it, then it does save, and if you don't, it doesn't save anything.
Excuse me.
On that receipt that you were talking about earlier, that unit notification, does that stamp exactly when their payment was submitted?
Their email
When,
notification? Yes.
timestamp, like, so you could tell, okay, they paid on time, it just took 2 days for it to hit the account?
Right, and that would be in your dashboard too, that
And then
information.
can you connect the landlord and your, the one that, probably not, sorry, have set up for the actual, almost using the word, the listing, can you attach the listing and the landlord so that they're connected?
Yes, yeah. So you can manage everything under your account, your listing, your applications, your screenings, your payments, your maintenance requests, all of that.
So let's say you have 5 properties, you could go to this one property on Douche Drive, and you could click on it, and you could actually see the applications and everything for just that one property, and then go back to your other property and click on it, and go in and manage your listing, your applications, and see everything from that.
Is there a question over here?
In the back here?
So the background check, that's what I was curious about. It still comes down to the owner, the landlord or whoever. So they just fill out a background check and then you would look at it yourself and see if it, okay.
Correct.
How many places can you list without charge?
Right now, 2.
2.
2 free listings.
When are you guys gonna change that?
You can purchase more.
You can what?
You can purchase
So
more.
how, I tell you, it seems like I tried once and it was impossible to get through and I to this day don't know how much it costs or how to do it.
I'll give you my business card.
Okay.
And you can get
So,
it.
2 active listings or
Yes,
2
two
total?
active listings. So you can build up to as many as you want, but you can only have 2 active listings. Yes.
So I got a duplex on there, and I rented one, and then when I wanted to rent the other unit, I had difficulty leaving the same, because it has one address.
Yes.
And I had difficulty
Because it was
posting
saved,
pictures to get
someone's
the
already
listing
using
for
the
the other
same.
unit, because they don't look the same.
Okay, so see this little contact Rentler support? If you get on and you're on there, if you just get on there and chat in what's going on, someone will go in that property and they'll help you figure it out.
Okay, and then like,
So
so
we'll
with
switch
that,
over.
with every example, the rent is the same. And if
So
unit
what
1
you do
pays
is-
rent and unit 2 pays rent, and I'm monitoring on there, am I gonna see their email or whatever connected to their account to be able to see who paid? And
Yeah, it's gonna be like 2 separate properties at that
Yep.
point.
Yep.
You wouldn't want them to, if it was 2 separate tenants, you wouldn't want them to connect into the unit. Do you know
No,
what I mean?
yeah, absolutely.
So on their side, so we would set you up as 2 different properties, say unit A and unit B, and then you would set up payment series and leases for both of those separate.
Applications for
Okay,
both.
so I just need to contact you guys to set them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just add a property, where he was talking about at the beginning, you would just add a property and,
Yeah, it's on there, but every time I try to connect the address,
yeah,
like
so you should
I try
chat
to
in
do
and
unit
our
1,
girls will
unit
be
2.
able to help you. We have a chat service that's, I want to say 24/7, but it's, yeah.
It's pretty close. Or we can give you a customer support number, or I can even take your contact information and then help you.
Okay.
So
A shout out
we've got
to-
about 5 more minutes of questions before we're going to break, but if you've got a specific question for you or your account, they're going to be here for a few minutes and they can talk specifically. So only ask a question that you think applies to the whole group, but not just your specific situation.
Question.
Yes.
It says maintenance, manage maintenance requests from any employees and so forth.
So,
What define that? You
okay, so we've had a lot of,
Our business, not just collecting money, but
Right.
fixing all these things.
so, you know, a lot of people say, I text my landlord, I call them, and then it didn't get fixed. Well, now you can have your tenants say, look, you got to log on to your Rentler account and submit a maintenance request. And so this way, if you ever have to go to court or anything like that, you have a track record of actually, look, I acknowledged your maintenance request, here's my receipts from what was fixed. It's just basically a way of somebody talking without having to call you or text you or come to your house or however they're requesting maintenance requests now.
They can submit pictures and videos.
You do the paperwork, but you don't line up the repair.
No. So
We've
just a
actually-
way for you to
yeah.
manage your requests coming through from your tenants.
How long is that archived on a system?
What's that mean? It's, I think
They're just on there until you archive them.
Yeah.
Well, and everything is, all requests are kept in perpetuity, so we've had people who have actually asked for unarchived requests.
She has a question.
Actually, it's a comment. I just want to give a shout out to your customer support. Anytime I've ever gone on there with any kind of a problem, using the chat box, I mean, it seems like within minutes somebody responds, or at least if I'm late, by the next morning, somebody has already responded to resolve my questions. So shout out to your customer
We're pretty
service.
proud of them. They're awesome. And so that's why, you know, if you chat in or call in, or just let us know, we can help you and direct you to somebody that can help you.
I want to say the same thing. I get a lot better tenants once I list with Rentler. It gets out there, and the quality of tenants that I have to choose from is much higher.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, let's give them a big round of applause. Okay, real quickly, a couple of things. In September, our monthly meeting that will be here, do you remember the day?
27th.
27th of September is on the real estate market. So let me tell you what that means. We're going to have data. We're going to have economists that tell us what the rent growth is, what the economy is doing, what your rent increases should be expected, what your vacancy rate should be, how long your turnover days should be. So this is awesome, incredible data that we're going to be able to present to you. We're also going to have a panel of realtors. They're going to talk about time on the market. How much money properties are selling for? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? All of that kind of stuff. So definitely come and bring a friend, bring a guest. Bring somebody that's not yet a member of the apartment association. They'll love, just like you, what we provide them and become a member. So that's our challenge for September, is bring somebody to the September 27th meeting. And Rentler will be here. Taylor and I are here if you have any questions. Thanks so much for coming. We'll see you soon.